Okay, everyone, welcome to Reclaim Our Vote. Thanks for coming. We're talking Electoral College tonight, and Carmen, why don't we do it?
Yes. Hi, guys. Welcome. If you've never been to one of our forums, I want to firstly welcome you in and just so happy you're here because we are here to learn together and to demystify the ballot and the breakdown of the government and these structures that are here in place and are designed to keep us uninformed. So we are all here to just learn together, to ask questions. We're not experts, but we saw that there's an extreme need and a lack of knowledge when it comes to voting. And even in the most simple basics of terminology, a lot of my friends and family and don't know the basics of voting. And as we began to ask, we saw that was across the board the situation. So that's what Reclaim Our Vote is all about. It's just really empowering us, the people, so that when we step into these polling stations and even having conversations with people, we can be informed and make choices based on information and not just guesses or hypotheses or whatever like that. We just want to empower ourselves with knowledge. Myself and Ross and Kyle, we kind of came together and created the basis of this forum so that we can talk and amplify the voices of our partners, which are Black Boys Recycle and Be an Ally. They're both wonderful organizations, Black owned, Black empowered, and we are here to amplify their voice and, of course, increase knowledge and understanding within the Black community and minority communities and underserved communities, so that way we all as a whole can come together and make decisions based on what's best for us in that demographic. So if I know that Pierre J couldn't make it on the call today, she is one of the founders of Be an Ally. But I do believe Kelly, who is also her partner within Be an Ally. Kelly, are you on the call? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I am. If you can hear me, I am on the call.
Got you, Kelly.
Yes, we can. Yes, please tell us a little bit about Be an Ally, any updates or anything that's upcoming for you all, and where we can find out more information.
So if you aren't informed, Be an Ally, we are pretty much a platform. We are here to distribute resources for those on the front line of the protests, whether they need pro bono lawyers or people who are just going through the COVID madness, as well as the protests and everything that we have to see on the media. We have a directory of mental health advocates and mental health therapists. So we have directories of that, and as well as the pro bono lawyers. And on the flip side, also, if you are pretty much someone who just now finding out a lot about what's going on, or if you want to help out, you want to support, we also have a directory of social justice organizations. We have a section of the website called Courageous Conversations, where we're pretty much educating people week in and week out. We give them some content, pretty much some tailor-made content. So we're just here to pretty much distribute resources. These resources are added weekly, updated weekly. So we do have a thorough vetting process as far as that. So we're just here to help out any way we can. We're just pretty much like a tangible, I guess you can say, as far as collaborating with other organizations and just seeing how we can use our resources, our talents, our skills, and be a help in the movement. So we are an early organization. We've only been we started around the George Floyd riots and things like that. So we're fairly new, just like Reclaim Your Vote. So we're here. We're if you can actually find us at Be an Ally, BEANALLY.co. That is our website. So you can pretty much just navigate the website, get a better feel. So we are active on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So we do have a lot of things in store, for the near future. Just kind of just sit back and wait. We're just happy to be able to collaborate with Reclaim Our Vote and the Bad Adults and everyone else that's involved. I'm just happy to see everybody, mobilizing, getting together, and really just taking action. So we're here to help out, and in any way we can.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, Be an Ally is a wonderful resource. Please check out their website. They have a full database of helpful links and resources that you can just tap into, and whatever it is that you feel led to either get involved with or have questions about. They are building kind of like a directory or database, if you will, for our needs as we power through this year called 2020. Okay. So I want to go ahead and introduce another one of our partners here at Reclaim Our Vote. I want to introduce Shines, who is the founder of Black Boys Recycle, based here in Los Angeles. So Shines, if you're on the call, please the lead and tell us a little bit about Black Boys Recycle and any updates or upcoming things that we should be looking out for.
All right, thank you, Carmen, for an amazing intro as usual. And hello to everyone else who's here. If you haven't been here, it's your first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. You're in for a treat. You're in for a treat with this one. These guys put together an amazing team, and they do an amazing job. So Black Boys Recycle, my name is Shines, by the way, Shines. And if everybody didn't get that, that's Shines. Black Boys Recycle is a nonprofit organization as well as a lifestyle brand whose purpose is to put on demonstrations and activations where we repurpose the narrative in which people see Black and brown people in different facets and different companies and different businesses. So, for instance, we did a previous lemonade stand, which we'll also be doing again on the 1st, as well as August 1st, as well as the 9th. So we'll have 2 activations on August 1st and August 9th. Where we're doing another lemonade stand in other communities, bringing community together, just showing community awareness and just bringing together just the repurposing narrative as far as where people see us and where they're comfortable seeing us. So our last activation was in Bel Air. We're going to do one in Manhattan Beach and as well as Venice. You guys stay posted and stay tuned to Black Boys Recycle on Instagram, as well as blackboysrecycle.com for any updates. And also for people who are in the cannabis, we have a puff and paint where we bring together the creative arts as well as the cannabis industry. And we have different sponsors, things like that. And we put on a nice activation with an instructor. And we'll have one on the 8th, August 8th, where we'll have one outside. We release the address once the date gets a little closer, but we'll have one on August 8th. And it'll be an outside event where we practice social distancing. And everything else for this COVID thing that's going on right now. I don't even know what to call it. Forgive me, guys, for being so long-winded and also with very few words. You know what I mean? But I hope I explained everything enough for you guys. Stay tuned to Reclaim Our Vote, also Black Boys Recycle, and Be an Ally. And you sure to be seeing me and everything else I got going on coming real soon.
Thank you, Shines. Yes, very busy guy. He's out and about. All right. Helping us get it together, okay, in this very interesting climate that we got going on. So please stay tuned, get involved, tap in. If you do not follow either of those organizations, please do so on Instagram so you can be tapped in and know what's going on. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get the party started. Let's get going. Let's get our knowledge going. Let's get our pens and paper out. We're going to be talking about the Electoral College today. What is that? It's not a university. I'll tell you that one. So we'll start there. So the Electoral College is very important. And it's something that I could not have told you the definition for about a week ago. Okay, cue that Bobby Shmurda. I'm just kidding. Sorry, let me reel it in, okay? My chai tea is getting to me, okay? But anyway, I want to go ahead and get into our segment, which is about the Electoral College. It is the reason and the way that we have presidents. And we're going to learn about this, the system, and Could be surprising, could be not. But I'm going to kick it off to Kyle, who has been researching and looking up the ins and outs of the Electoral College and going to give us a little bit of insight into what that is and how it works. So, Kyle, I give the floor to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Black Boys Recycle and Be an Ally. I cannot implore everybody enough to go to Be an Ally's website and to attend one of the lemonade stands or the events that Black Boys Recycle is going to be doing. It will change your perception of like people in general. It's such a wonderful place to be and the people around. And I say that because what we're about to get into, which is the fuckery, which is the Electoral College. My beautiful friend Mackenzie Yeager asked me to explain this, and I'm going to do my best, but I can still say, even with reading as much as I have, I'm going to have to continue to read off of this because it's still hard for me to understand. And Ross, I would ask you to jump in if I'm explaining something that it may sound like I'm going through a vocal scrambler, or if you're like, oh, Kyle, that's wrong. That's not right at all. Because it's still pretty bizarre to me. Also because it hasn't been changed in a millennia.
Right. It's almost like, why would we do things this way?
It makes no sense. But Ross and I talked earlier today, and the way that he told me to break it down, which I think makes a lot of sense, which is how it is framed within our school systems, and then what is the actual sort of brevity of the Electoral College and what it's actually done and what it actually means and who it's good for and who it's not. And I also apologize because I've had to take to tequila because the Electoral College is
The Electoral College is going to do it to you.
Okay. So the Electoral College, I feel, this is what I'm also going to talk about feelings because this is what I feel from what I read. And I will be the first to admit that I am that person who has always said, I know this, I get it, I understand it, but that's me looking at a situation and saying like, I'm woke, I understand, but it's really just skimming the surface rather than doing the deep dive. So I'll admit that first because I think that that's a good thing to sort of like admit and put out there that like we are all here to be learning together, and that I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not smart, but I would say I'm uninformed to where I need to be. So for me, what I perceived the Electoral College is checks and balances in the originator, sort of like what they thought this was going to be doing. So the original purpose of the Electoral College was to reconcile the differing between state and like federal interests, and to provide a degree of like popular participation in the election, meaning like giving less populated states some advantages or leverages in the process where more populated states would have sort of the advantages. And, you know, by providing a senatorial electors sort of to preserve the presidency as independent of Congress. And senatorial, and I did have to look this up, means long-standing, unwritten, unofficial, non-binding political custom, which is ironic. And it's like, I mean, that's hilarious. So that's whatever. Okay, so the Constitutional Convention of 1787 considered several methods of electing of the president, right? This is where they like all got together and decided about basically what's going to happen. And it's included selection by Congress, by the governors of states, by the governors of legislation, by a specific group, blah, 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 blah. And the plan, which met with widespread approval by the delegates, was incorporated into the final document of 1787 with only a few minor changes. So then, because the 1786 Americans recognized that the Articles of the Confederation, which happened in 1786. The foundation document of the United States adopted in 1777 had to be substantially modified. These are a lot of dates. We're jumping around. I get that. It's very confusing. I was confused as well. I'm going to try and whatever. Okay, so the Constitution gave each state a number of electors equal to the combined total of its membership in the Senate. So 2 to each state, and its delegation in the House of Representatives, currently ranging 1 to 52 members. So the qualifications for the office are pretty broad. The only people prohibited from serving as electors of are senators, sorry, let me start that over again. The qualifications for the office are broad. The only people prohibited from serving as electors are senators, representatives, and people holding an office of trust or profit under the United States. So in order to be a partisan and for manipulation purposes, the electors assemble in their respective states and cast their ballots as state units rather than meet at a central location. So at least one of the candidates for whom the electors vote must be an inhabitant of another state. Ross.
Yes, Kyle.
That is one thing I wanted to expound upon. They have to be of another state.
I mean, the process of which you select electors has always been like super weird to me.
Okay.
And like it gets in this, your guess is as good as mine there.
Okay.
I don't know. And that's part of the reason this is also
weird.
Like what? And maybe we'll talk about, maybe we'll talk about faithless electors, which is a whole other thing. We'll get there. Like there's so much like.
I'm going to keep going. That was just one thing
going.
that I recognized while I was reading that I was like, well, this makes no sense. But that's a majority of our government. So a majority of the electoral votes is necessary to elect, right? A requirement intended to ensure broad acceptance of a winning candidate, while election by the House was provided as a default method in the event of an Electoral College deadlock. So all of these systems remain in effect currently. The original method of electing the president and vice president, however, provoked unworkable and was replaced by the 12th Amendment in 1804. In other words, so they had problems with like the election of the vice president. So in 1804, they like made the 12th Amendment, which is passed by Congress, and it's ratified in 1804 that the 12th Amendment provided by the separate Electoral College vote for the president and the vice president, correcting weaknesses in earlier electoral college systems that were responsible for controversial presidential elections of 1800. This is like the bare minimum, the surface. When you look up like, what is the Electoral College? This is what they basically tell you, which is very confusing and very skimming the surface, which is they had some problems. They ratified them in the 1803, 1804, and then everything was fine. And since the 1800s, we really haven't done many updates. Correct, Ross?
Yeah, like a casual 200 years of not a whole lot.
Right. So now let's and this brings back to I was speaking to my mom today, and my mom had said to me, and don't get me wrong, my mom I feel like is very with it, but the way that she said it was, I was telling her about tonight, and she said, kids aren't going to learn history the same way I did. And I was like, I am so grateful for that, Mom. Because I explained to her, I was like, I think that the reason you feel like things are being taken from you or things are being changed is because like you grew up a certain way and that's your tradition and you want to hold on to it. But the problem is your tradition are full of lies and skimming the surface and taking base value. And just think of like how our kids are going to get to learn so much more and expound on things, because textbooks are basically like throwaway paper you should put your gum in. Okay, so now we're framing it in what we understand. I literally wrote how we should be framing it, Mom. This is love you. I hope she's on. Okay. So this was in response to Shelby's country's oral argument, which was something that we touched upon, correct, Ross, last time?
Yeah, we did.
Yes. See, Kyle's learning, which was basically about the way voting, like there were all these implementations in the rights of voting, and they dealt with lifting Black people up so that they could vote, or people of color up so that they could vote. And then once they felt the Supreme Court felt like everything was fine, they got rid of everything. And we're like, no, we're all equal now and everything's fine. So that's what the Shelby County's sort of like oral agreement was. So Justice Antonin Scalia, not a fan.
R.I.P.
I'm not a fan. New Orleanian, not a fan. When it said, whenever a society adopts racial entitlements, it is very difficult to get them out through the normal political processes. This was a justice on the Supreme Court. Okay. Ironically enough, there is some truth to this, and otherwise it's insane. But American elections have an acute history of racial entitlements, only they don't privilege Black people. So what he was saying basically was it's very hard to get racial entitlements passed through the political system that is not for white people. And that's the thing that I think that we're learning with everything that we sort of delve into, is that every system in our government is meant to uphold white people and push down every other person. And to think of the Electoral College as like a crazy geometry system that doesn't make sense to begin with, and then to know that it was systematically put in place to keep down people of color is ugh. Okay, I'm gonna have to read a lot of this because it's otherwise I wouldn't be able to say it as articulately.
We got you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for centuries, white votes have gotten undue weight as a result of innovations as poll taxes and voter ID laws and outright violence to discourage racial minorities from voting. We know this, right? But delegates from the slaveholding South had another rationale for opposing the direct election method, and they had no qualms about articulating it. Doing so would be to their disadvantage, obviously. So there would be one difficulty, however, of serious nature attending an immediate choice by the people. The right of suffrage was much more diffusive in the northern than the southern states, okay? So the latter could have no influence in the election or the score on the score of how Black people voted, because they couldn't vote. The substitution of electors obviated the difficulty and seemed on the whole to be liable to the fewest objections. Let's break it down a little. So the populations in the North and the South were approximately equal, right? When Electoral College came into sort of the minds of whoever.
When they're creating it.
Right.
Yeah.
But roughly 1/3 of those living in the South were held as slaves. Because of its considerable non-voting South population, the region would have less clout under the popular vote system. So we have popular vote and we have Electoral College, right? So, and I literally wrote out, must read this, Kyle, you cannot explain it better. Okay, so right from the get-go, the Electoral College has produced no shortage of lessons about the impact of racial entitlement in selecting a president. History buffs and Hamilton fans, Ross,
in the chat.
I did, are aware that in the first major failure of the Electoral College produced a tie between Thomas Jefferson and his putative running mate, Aaron Burr. What's less known about the election of 1800 is the way the Electoral College succeeded, which is to say that it operated as one might have expected based on its embrace of the 3/5 compromise, right? So the South's baked in advantages, the bonus electoral votes it received for maintaining slaves, which Ross is the population, right? The census. All while not allowing those slaves to vote the entire time, made the difference in the election outcome. So it's the amount of people that produces the amount of electoral votes, even though the majority of people were not allowed to vote.
Yeah.
So it gave the slaveholder Jefferson an edge over his opponent, the incumbent president and abolitionist John Adams. And just so we know, like, abolitionist literally means, and I know what abolitionist means, but I think it's important to know what it literally means. An abolitionist, as the name implies, is a person who sought to abolish slavery during the 19th century. More specifically, these individuals sought to the immediate and full emancipation of slaves. So this would have been in the early 1800s, 1802 to be exact. Now I typed in I cannot. Okay. In 1803, the 12th Amendment modified the Electoral College to prevent another Jefferson-Burr type debacle, right? So 6 decades later, the 13th Amendment outlawed slavery, right? So that was 6 decades later. So let's think of, like, if we had elected a president who was about abolishing slavery 6 decades earlier. Okay, so 6 decades later, the 13th Amendment outlawed slavery, thus ridding the South of its windfall electors. Nevertheless, the shoddy system, i.e. the Electoral College, continued to cleave the American democratic ideal along racial lines. In the 1876 presidential election, right, the Democrat Samuel Tilden won the popular vote, but some electoral votes were in dispute. Often, I feel like, and maybe you can touch on this later, electoral votes get disputed. But so, including those in a state I represent all the time and apologize for, Florida. Oh, God. So an ad hoc commission of lawmakers and Supreme Court justices were enabled to resolve the matter. Ultimately, they awarded the contested electoral votes to, not Tilden, no, of course not, to Rutherford, which was Rutherford Hayes, who was a Republican, who had lost the popular vote. As a part of the agreement known as the Compromise of 1877, so remember, 6 decades later, now we're in 1877, the federal government removed the troops that were stationed in the South after the Civil War to maintain order and protect Black voters. The deal, once marked at the end of the brief Reconstruction era, the redemption of the Old South, the birth of the Jim Crow regime, this decision to remove soldiers from the South led to the restoration of white supremacy in voting through the systematic disenfranchisement of Black people, virtually accomplishing over the next 8 decades what slavery had accomplished in the country in the first 8 decades. So literally, just in another way, implementing a system in which it's like you can't see the change, you can't own somebody, but now you can own them in a different way. So what is clear is that more than 2 centuries after it was designed to empower Southern whites, the Electoral College continues to literally do just that. The current system has a distinct adverse impact on Black voters, diluting their political power, because the concentration of Black people is the highest in the South still currently. And under the Electoral College, Black votes are submerged in the precise reason of the success of the Southern strategy. It is precisely how the South has continued to prevail. Basically saying that beyond what encompasses a state. It is these two representatives, or however many representatives, that go and elect a president for the entire country. It is, I mean, I will pass the mic in a second, but like, this still boggles my mind and confuses me in a way that if this is a system that is electing our president as for an entire country, and I can't understand it for reading about it for a week, what the fuck?
You just trust John King and his big map when he just points to little states and circles them as they go red or blue. That you just trust it.
And I know that was confusing, what I just talked about, and I had to like, it blows my mind, and it's so backwards. And
well, what I think is so insane about it is that we just aren't taught in schools anything about the reasons in why the South was pushing for this method so hard. I mean, it is so crazy to me that I had no idea until we were looking into this week that the South only wanted this system because they knew their votes would be watered down because they had people in bondage.
Right.
And we've just gone with it for 200 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that is so mind-blowing to me is that they knew in 1787 that things were wrong with the Electoral College, and they were like, let's make some amendments. Let's ratify these things. And then that was it. Like, basically 1803, nothing has been changed. Right. That they saw back then that the population was changing, that people were changing, that states were changing, and that they would amend the current law to reflect that. Yet we're in the year 2020 when we have hoverboards and we can't. Sorry.
Well, I think another thing to point out is what we discussed a couple days ago is that it doesn't change because the people who are in power have quite literally just benefited from that system. And as people move around, as things shift, and as we're seeing right now, there could be a fundamental shift, maybe not this year, hopefully this year, but in the next few years, there's going to be a fundamental shift in how these certain states that are considered battleground states, we're going to get to in a second, how they vote. Yeah. And it could turn into a few years versus like now the Electoral College vastly benefits the Republican Party. They are all those middle states, right? That little bit by bit, they add up to that magic 270 number. Again, we'll talk about it in a second. But that might change. And not we, but the Democratic Party, me, the Democratic Party is like, hey, we should think about changing this. Maybe we should change this. Maybe we should change this. Until it might benefit the Democratic Party, at which point, are there still going to be calls from the Democrats to change it? Who knows? I hope so.
Right, because it's like if it benefited the Democratic Party, would they be so upset about it?
Right. And so you're just holding people who have just won power because of that system accountable to actually change it. And that's why, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What's so interesting?
So just another very disappointing fact. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing how things are still the same from 1803. So this is our reality. This is why we come here together, so we can just talk about this. Like, this is insane, and we just need to know the structures that are around us and understand what's going on, so that way we can take actionable moves going forward. And even just knowing is a step in the right direction. So Kyle, thank you so much for breaking that down. I know it was a lot for everybody. Again, we are not experts, so please do your own research as well. Empower yourselves to at least use this as a springboard to do your own research and reading in regards to the actual structures that determine our president and how our country is formed. So we're gonna introduce Ross now, who has done some research of his own. that will help us to kind of understand this a little bit better. And if for those who don't know, Ross actually has a background in politics and policies and working in these the industry that I don't know to be as politics. So he's kind of like the go-to guy. So you see Kyle's kind of asking him questions. That's because he's in my world, in my community, he's the guy that I always ask about these sorts of things.
No.
And so again, we thank you for sharing your knowledge and being here with us on Reclaim Our Vote. So without further ado, please let us know what you found out this week.
Thank you, Carmen. Hi, guys. It's good to be with all y'all again this week. As Carmen said, I work for an organization called Accelerator for America. We work in cities across the country to help alleviate the stress and the pressure that is put on underserved communities and work with economic development, work within economic development to lift those countries up and keep that money within those communities. But this week, I'm also a total political junkie. I'm obsessed with politics. I like to dig deep into the minutia. I'm on every Tuesday of this year, I've been watching election returns and primary returns come in. And it's my favorite thing in the world to do. And so I really am excited about this topic because I get to geek out and talk about the Electoral College, which is, as we have discussed, how we elect the president in this country. So I did prepare a PowerPoint, so deal with it. So I'm going to share the screen. Here we go, because I didn't do that the first time and it was awkward. All right, let's do it. So the 2020 Electoral College map, that's what I want to talk about because we're in election season, right? We all see it all the time. We know it's coming up. And we've seen these happen on, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever you watch. We've seen these things happen and how they play out on cable news, right? We've all seen this. We've all seen John King. We've all seen Wolf Blitzer circling things. This is a little PTSD for me because I worked on Beto O'Rourke's Senate campaign. So they're talking about a campaign I worked on there, and it didn't end up well for me that night, but that's neither here nor there. But we've seen this, and then you're kind of going, what's he pointing to? What are the numbers? What do the numbers on the states mean? Well, what we do is we have to get to 270 electoral points. That's what a candidate for president needs to get to. That's the point at which they have won the majority of the Electoral College. There's 538 Electoral College points to be had. And to cross the threshold in which you are safely the president-elect, you need to get 270 of those. And so it's all about the strategy. When you're in a campaign, it's all about the strategy with which you decide where you're going to allocate your resources on that map to get to that magic number of 270 points. There are states that are very safe. There are states that are toss-ups. There are states that lean or are likely. It changes, as we've discussed. But just to break down for you a little bit, because we're going to be saying that a lot, is the main things we're going to be focusing on in this election, that we focus on every election, are safe versus toss-up states. A safe state is a state that is going to reliably, based on polling or history, vote one way or the other. We in California here are what's called a safe blue state. Generally, we're going to vote for the Democratic candidate. That's the way that most people lean in this state. New York is another one. Alaska is one that is on the Republican side. They are a reliably safe state. As we've talked about, a lot of the South is reliably Republican. That's why you see that big swath of the country in the middle. It's generally painted red. It's because a lot of those states are going to vote Republican. And then a toss-up state, which is what we're kind of seeing more of right now. It's a little bit harder to predict in 2020 because we've seen so much population growth and so much movement of population centers that there are more states that their electorate base, the people who are voting within those states, is changing. So what the party they would traditionally vote for might be changing too. And some of those, as we've seen back from 2000 to now, every year, Florida, we never know which way Florida is going to go. What are the old people going to do? What's the Cuban population going to do? What are places like Miami going to do? It's always a toss-up. Ohio used to be really considered a toss-up. Now it's leaning more Republican, but maybe this year that'll change. We don't know. North Carolina is another one. And then there are others that like I said, are lean or likely. Like if you see a state that on a map is shaded pink or a light blue, it leans Republican or leans North Carolina. We think so, but that could change. We'll see. So those are the kind of key words to hone in on. So battleground states. This is going to be the focus of the upcoming election. These are the places where Donald Trump and Joe Biden's campaigns are going to be focusing their money, their resources, so that they can outreach as many voters as humanly possible in those states and make sure that when it comes to election day, they have the edge. A couple big ones that are talked about a lot, especially this year, are the Blue Wall and the Sun Belt. The Blue Wall are these industrial centers where there's lots of union activity, and they were historically, at least since the Southern strategy and the democratic shift that happened in the 1960s, they have been a safe blue vote because the Democratic Party is known for union support, unionizing workers, labor, making sure that workers' rights are a big thing. At least that's what historically the Democratic Party was known for. So places like Detroit, in places like Chicago, Milwaukee, like there's lots, and like Pittsburgh, right? There's lots of factories, there's lots of manufacturing good union labor jobs. Now, we are kind of seeing a shift to those more blue collar workers, right? Trend more Republican. So that's kind of changing. So in 2016, we all saw that blue wall begin to crumble down. And now there are these, because we're in such an extreme time, we're seeing, maybe, we don't know, is Wisconsin going to vote for Joe Biden again? Will Michigan seems like it really could, like so there's lots of money being put into these races because both those candidates really want to get those states. The Sun Belt is another one. The Sun Belt is a region of the country where we're seeing lots of immigrant communities that are becoming citizens, that are registering to vote. Lots of the children, the next generation who are aging into voting, the children of those immigrant communities who are naturally born citizens are turning 18. And so there's lots and lots of people that are going to be able to vote in this election. So we're seeing those demographics of those voters shift as well. So places that have never really been in play before, like Texas, like Arizona, possibly Georgia, are trending now in towards battleground territory. And that's why, like, Texas and Georgia, like Texas is the red state, right? That's what most of the country believes. But it could be, like people thought 2018, oh, this is the year, Beto's going to do it. Now 2020, it could be the year that maybe Texas is finally a purple state. And when it comes, so you had the states that are definitely getting a lot of money, like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And then really just depending on how things are looking, like right now, Joe Biden is, depending on which poll you're looking at, and I'll go on a little poll rant in a second here, not about 9 points ahead in the polls, ahead of Donald Trump. So his campaign's feeling pretty good right now. If that keeps going, if they're getting lots of donations, Trump keeps digging himself into a grave with the coronavirus, what have you, Joe Biden might say, let's put more money into Texas. Let's put more money into Georgia. Let's try and shore up support there and really rack up that voter total if he's feeling safe. Because if he's not, if things start to close the gap a little bit, he might be like, nah, pull money out of Texas. It's fine. Let's make sure we win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, et cetera. So those are all good. These are the states to kind of look at when you're looking at the map and trying to figure out like where the hotbeds of activity are going to be when it comes to November. Now, like I said, a quick rant about polling. People are obsessed with polls. The hardcore liberals, the hardcore conservatives look at this stuff and like live and die by it. If you are a hardcore Democrat right now, you're going, oh my God, this is so great. This is amazing. We're kicking ass, da, 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 da. And people are so obsessed with these things. And there's a few different reasons why. One, historically, we learned from 2016, when it comes to Donald Trump, people may say they're not going to vote for him, then quietly go in the booth and do it anyway, right? Or based on likely voters, there could be a ton of people in Georgia, in Texas, in all these other southern states that they're like gung-ho gonna vote for Joe Biden, but then their polling location gets shut down, the road construction happens, and they can't make it to the polls, and guess what? Those votes don't happen. So there are so many factors that we just don't know that go into polling. And sometimes polling's really, really great, and scientifically it's right on. But when it comes down to the day, we have no idea what's going to happen. So I hate to I hate when I see people being like, Yahoo! Or oh no, we're toast. This is all pointless with the polls, because you should always act like the guy that, or the lady or the whoever that you are all about is down like 10 points in the polls, and volunteer and call and donate and all that sort of stuff. So that's my little quick rant. All right. So this is, as of yesterday, what the map is looking like for 2020 right now. So like I said before, you need that 207. This is from 270towin.com. So 270 electoral points. This is a little bit more of a generous map, I would say, for Joe Biden than some of the other ones. But I wanted to show it because it really shows, it has a lot of the different things we've talked about. So the dark colors you're seeing are the safe, the reliably one way or the other states. The lighter colors are those lean or likely states. And then the brown, those are the toss-ups. And you can see the point allocation up above in that bar. So this toss-up and the number of electors, this goes back to what Kyle said, right? So there's 55, California, and we here in California have the most electoral points of any state here, because we have 1 point for our senators each, so 2 points, and then one for at least one representative. So you automatically get 3 in every state. So like in Vermont, that's all they have, right? North Dakota, that's all they get. But then you get an additional one for every House rep that your state has. So California, we've got 52 reps. So we've got 3 votes altogether. Does that make sense? So you can see 183 are safe blue, 29 are lean or likely blue, and then 66 are lean blue, with the 56 up there still in that toss-up category. So it's a matter of like, okay, we're going to definitely put money in that blue wall I talked about, Minnesota over to Pennsylvania, right? And we don't need to spend as much money here because it's looking pretty good. But it's about right now, sure, we want to put money in Arizona. We need to put money in Florida because we're going to need those points. But do we want to put some money in Georgia and Texas? Maybe. Do we want to put some money in Ohio? Yeah, probably. But it just depends on how things are looking, how much of that you do. And then we have another one, the CNN map here. It's a little...
Sorry, we had a couple questions. What do the stripes mean?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So in Maine, they do things strangely. They allocate their 4 votes based on their 2 House seats. They have 2 House seats there. And so there's one that's in this, like, so you can take a kind of a line across Maine on the diagonal here, and you can just draw, and their like first district is Portland, Maine, which is like the largest city in Maine, and it's largely liberal. And then there's the second district, which is a lot more conservative. And so they've decided that where they're going to do it, they're going to base their 2 electoral points on the popular vote of the state. They're going to, whoever gets that, whoever wins the most votes in the state gets 2. But then they're going to allocate those other 2 to whoever the most popular candidate is in that district. So if say Donald Trump wins the state outright, he'll get 4 votes. But if Joe Biden wins the South and Donald Trump wins the North, Joe Biden could get 1 or 3, and the vice versa. Trump could get 1 or 3. Does that make sense? Kinda. I know it's confusing. Maine also does this thing called ranked choice voting. So they're just like experimenting up there. They're trying to see how things go. Ranked choice voting is a really cool system, which you literally list, like, if there are 5 candidates, you go 1 through 5, who your favorites are, and they kind of get whittled away down to whoever the top vote lead. Like if your number 1 gets cut out, it just goes to your number 2 and your number 3, and so your vote is always alive. So it kind of gets rid of the most extreme candidates, and you end up with one that's a touch more moderate. So some people that don't like that say you get a watered down candidate, and other people say you have the most reasonable candidate, you know? But they're trying things, and it's cool. But it does mean that it's kind of confusing. And Vermont, I think, Vermont or New Hampshire, and someone who might know as well can correct me, but I think one of those other states, they do the same thing there. Yeah. So then, are there any other questions? Because I can't see because I got my screen share.
I guess one other question was like, what is a purple state?
Oh, that's a very good question. So a purple state is going to be one that is kind of those toss-ups, those areas that could go either way. There's a good mix of Republicans. There's a good mix of Democrats, a lot of independents, people who vote based on the candidate and not the party. So those are purple states. And, you know, a couple of those that we have are North Carolina, Ohio used to be, Arizona is turning into one, Nevada sometimes. So those more like lean likely ones, and the toss-up ones are more purple.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't need to keep going back. This is just a more conservative map. It shows a lot more of then this is again from yesterday based on current polling, how things are looking. So it's just a little bit more, I guess it would be bullish for Joe Biden. No, bearish. Bearish is the one that's bad. Bearish for Joe Biden. It's just like, you know, there's more so that is in the toss-up category than in that 270 win one. So again, like, take all of these maps and polls with a grain of salt, because who knows what's going to happen. We've all seen in the last 3.5 years that so much can change in a 24-hour period. This could look completely different next week after the debates. It could certainly look very, very different if there are debates. So it's good to, if you're like me and you obsessively check 538, which I'll show you, these are some good resources for you to use if you become obsessed with this stuff like me. They're healthy until they're not. And that's what I'll say. Like anything, polls should be taken in moderation, because they just change all the time. But it's super interesting. The reason that these are good also is it shows you where if you've got a little bit of money spare, you can toss some money to a candidate that's in Michigan. You can toss some money to a candidate that's in Wisconsin, like for the Senate, because down ballot races matter. We talked about that a lot. So you can see where there might need the whole ticket that you're in support of might need a bump, and you could throw some money to the party there, right? So yeah, it shows you a little bit. But that's that. Again, just here, Real Clear Politics. It's a mix of all the types of news. They're going to have some like Breitbart stuff, and they're going to have some Huffington Post stuff. So you get a wide spectrum of resources on Real Clear Politics, as well as up-to-date polling information. 538, they've got a great podcast that's just very by the numbers, very like removes all the feeling from it and just tells you this is literally what's going on. 270 to win. They have really cool pie charts that show you the support in every state, as well as the electoral numbers. So it really breaks it down simply. And Ballotpedia is more so for if you want to know who the candidates in your district are. It has a really good background on everybody that's kind of in your district, in your state, etc. So it's a good resource there too. And that is that. And I'll stop sharing now.
And I can include what Ross just did, the PowerPoint, as well as the links that he just gave for polling and elections in the email that we send out weekly. So if you want to be included on that email list and you are not currently, just shoot that email to our Instagram, your email, I mean, to reclaim our vote, and I'll put you on that weekly. And hopefully everything will just go up on our website, and then you won't have to rely on an email. But for right now,
still in process, under construction, but we're getting there.
Yes, we are. We're getting there 1 week at a time, you guys. This is our third session. So again, if this is your first time joining us, we're so happy that you're here. And if you've been a returning guest and a returning member of our community here, we just thank you so much for caring. You know, little thing called caring about what's going on. But thank you, Ross, for the PowerPoint as well. You know, it really helps to see things, and especially when we're talking about states and the colors. And this is, again, very confusing stuff. So, but it's meant for this to be confusing for the normal person. So again, please do your research. We encourage you to, you know, use this as a springboard to, you know, do your own, you know, diving and reading on your own time. And to stay to our hour, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up before we get into an optional discussion. If anybody has any questions, we do open the floor, but we definitely want to honor you all's time by staying to an hour here on Reclaim Our Vote. I just have a little wrap up that I want to do. So what we have learned, right, is that the current Electoral College system allows candidates to win the presidency while losing the popular vote, which makes no sense, right? If we are in a democracy, how is this possible? And especially when we look at the origins of it and how it hasn't been changed from 1803, and it just disproportionately affects Black people specifically. Also in this current electoral college system, the state winner takes all. It encourages a disproportionate focus to these swing states, like how Ross was saying. You know, the presidential candidate is going to pour money into to certain states, right? And so other states are just like, all right, whatever, we kind of won that, so we don't care. We don't care to, you know, show up and, you know, let our policies be known to the people in the other than the swing states, right? So it creates this kind of bias even. And then, you know, it also decreases, excuse me, voter turnout in states without close, without close races. So again, we're just not getting the same attention overall. And so how do we change this? What do we do? Things are jacked up. Well, we could change the Constitution, yeah, but that's gonna take, who knows, right? We all know that our system needs to be completely taken down and re-put back together, but that's going to take a lot of time, and who knows. So there is something that is currently on you know, legislation that's in place, right? It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. What a crazy name. Like, why can't things just be simple for us? It is called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and this essentially gets around the electoral vote without changing the Constitution. Each state decides how they award their electoral votes, and they decide their vote based on the candidate who wins the popular vote. And this would only work, right, when we have enough states that sign on to this. So that way we can have 270 of the electoral votes. Because Ross, how many do you need to, that's how many you need to win to be a president?
Yeah.
270, right?
Yeah.
So it only makes sense that we turn over to the system until we have states that vote on this and want to use this as their voting policy. And then this would completely change, right, the way that politics are done here in America. Even states who vote for Republicans consistently, they would be subject to even having, you know, Democratic governors, and, you know, state legislation and things like that will reflect, you know, better. And essentially, so again, this agreement of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an agreement that binds the popular vote to the electoral vote in just this most simple form. And it would only work once enough states join. I do have it pulled up who and how many we have. Let me find it. I've lost my, it looks like, I think we're at 196. As far as the numbers are concerned. So we need to get to 270 electoral votes that in order to get this National Popular Vote Interstate Compact into play. We're at 196, we need 270. I'm losing my little notes here. This is not good.
I mean, like, I basically, right, I think there's like 11 states that have
Yes.
said, like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then there's
Yes.
like 16 or something that are working on a proposal to present to their state legislators, and then there's everybody else who's like, nah. So we need to get you know, a few more states to say, yeah, let's do it, to get the, what was it, 196, so we need 74 more electoral votes to get there.
Yes, correct. And it's like, how do we do that? And I actually, Ross, I hadn't thought about that, is about actually contributing to other states' campaigns, right? Because we're in California. Well, you know, I don't know where we got people all over the U.S. I don't know, but
right.
State check right over here. You and I and majority of people here on this call are in California, and you know, would be considered a blue state, right? So what about these other states that need our help as far as changing things, and their systems are just just concrete and the same people showing up to the polls and the same peoples that are winning. But I liked how you said we can contribute to, you know, their campaigns, or you know, help to push their voices to be heard. And if I'm not mistaken, the websites that you shared, we can kind of go to and see what's going on.
So like, this was something that was like really talked about, I think, early on in the Democratic primary debates. There was people that were saying like, let's get rid of the Electoral College, and there are other candidates that were saying, no, we can't do that. And so it was one of those things that had a lot of heat for a second, and then it's kind of died down since we're out of that debate sphere. But we'll put it in the email and that we send out afterwards, but there is a website you can go to learn about it. You can learn about the states that have already signed on. You'll learn about the states that are trying to figure out if they're going to put something forward, and then where there's states where nothing's happening. So depending on where you are in the country, you can look into what's happening and either support that legislation that is to push it forward, or if you live in one of the states where nothing's going on, you might make calls to your state legislatures, your governor, and say like, we need to do something about this. The Electoral College is antiquated and outdated, and we need a new modern way of doing that, so we don't have another 2000, another 2016 where the popular vote winner doesn't win, right?
Yes, and I see here on Wikipedia, jurisdictions enacting law to join the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. We've got Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois, Hawaii, Washington, Massachusetts, DC, Vermont, California, Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut, Colorado, Delaware, New Mexico, and Oregon.
And what do a lot of those states have in common?
Yeah.
Blue.
Yes. So, you know, but the cool thing about, again, why we are here, right, is to talk about ways that we can create change. And it's a lot of information, and we do record our Zoom calls, and we do send out email blasts with information and, you know, things like that. We just try to put all the information in one place, or at least just spark your brain and say, let me call somebody's legislation, let me call somebody, or the Senate, or you know, just things that you can do in your own time in order to make change. So within that, I just want to close with I saw in the chat somebody mentioned Hassan Minhaj on Netflix, the Patriot Act. He has recently done a segment on voting, and I loved his segments. He makes it very digestible and easy to understand, so I definitely recommend checking that out on Netflix.
So
Andrew shot the link, so I will include that also in the email for everybody.
Nice.
So no matter what, you'll get it.
Perfect. And are we going to do our Reclaim Our Happy Hour really quickly?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, cool, guys. So at the end of our Reclaim Our Vote sessions, we do a Reclaim Our Happy Hour, which we're in the middle of lockdown, and you should not be in anybody's bar. If you are, you need to take your butt home right away, because COVID is out there and waiting on you. Within that perspective, we say, all right, we're not going to the bar and spending our money getting wasted. Let's use some of that money and put it towards a number of causes that desperately need funding. Recently, or excuse me, I would say even yesterday, I believe, there was a huge protest in Louisville for Breonna Taylor, led by Intel Freedom. Over 100 protesters got arrested, and so, you know, they got boots on the ground there to try to get justice for Breonna. So my Reclaim Our Happy Hour cause and organization is called Until Freedom. They are also on Instagram at that exact same name. Check it out. See if you are able to help and stay connected with Breonna's case.
Cool. Mine is my buddy Jabuki. His mom is a principal in Harvey, Illinois, and she is trying to raise funds for the kids in her school, both dealing with COVID-19 and dealing with like lunches and getting them supplies for next year and everything like that. So you can directly Venmo her. She's the principal. Her name is Norma Young White. And I'm going to put in our group Zoom chat or whatever her Venmo, because they need laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, toiletries, and masks. They an entire package costs $25, but you can also do you can send any amount of money that you want. And I'll put her Venmo in there, and I'll also put this in the email as well. Great cause, and her entire district is a majority Black and brown students.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to donate to that. That's really cool. Mine is one we've talked about before, but as we're learning, all things tie to the census. Everything leads back. All roads lead to the census. So we are doing that. Is happening this year. Get yourself counted. It is vital. It is vital, vital, vital that everyone fills out the census, because getting counted the census means how much money our states get, how much money our communities are allocated, and how you are both represented, your community is represented at the state level and at the federal level, because those state maps, those state legislators are going to be divvying up those state maps based on how many people that are counted. So especially in our minority communities, it's so vitally important that they do not feel scared to fill this out. It is not a trick. There is no citizenship question. The government is not tracking you. They're literally just counting bodies. So if you've not done your census yet, literally just Google US Census 2020 and fill it out. We have till December. So make sure that happens, because it ties to every single thing that we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. Well, and if you have to go now, we totally appreciate it and we understand. So we just thank you so much. We are here weekly on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Please tell your friends, please share Reclaim Our Vote Instagram, so that way we can all stay connected and you can just be a part of the solution, right? We're here to create change. Now, if you do have any questions or any discussion points you want to bring up, we totally welcome you and open the floor to you. Please unmute yourself if you have any direct questions to our conversation today, or maybe it's from another session that we've had, or maybe you just want to know more about, I don't know, whatever you want to do. Unmute yourself. You're welcome to say whatever you need to say.
Can you go back and try to explain a little bit again? I kind of got a little lost during the Electoral College with the South and how having a number of slaves and how that plays into it and stuff.
Yeah.
I know, it's so crazy.
It's so crazy, but I mean, Ross, do you want to?
I'm happy to, because
Yes.
that was like really what I got so fixated on, and I just became obsessed with it. So basically what happened is, when they were devising how we were going to elect our president, yes, on the surface is exactly what Day said. They wanted to kind of give separation from the people that were in power, and make sure that the states were being that the population of states were able to actually give voice to who the president should be, outside of a select few, right? But the reason it was so interesting to the southern states is that they had huge populations. A third of the population across the states were slaveholding states. So they had all these people who were being counted, they had residents that were there. However, those people could not vote. So they were worried that though there were an amount of people in America that were a select number of people in America were there, they would always be underserved because the number of people actually voting was significantly less. So they said, how do we figure this out? How do we do this? What they did is they figured out a way that they could do the census number within that state. The number of people actually in that state would be the number of electors they would receive. However, since the people that could not vote, the white people in power would be able to select whoever they wanted, and they would get more power for less vote. Does that make sense?
I think so. It's starting to make more sense.
Yeah. So you're including the slaves and the slave owners, so you get to bump that number of people, that your electoral point number up, but only using the slave owners' vote to influence what they want.
Yeah, it's a loophole. They cheated the system.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're still doing it now. And then there's also this whole issue. Like, I mean, the southern, that's why the South has been reliably conservative forever, and because Black people are still majority in that region of the country, there's a lot of voter suppression going on because they want to hold on to that influence and that, you know, that sort of that way of life, right?
So it's majority, in other words. It's like, it's the amount of people counted as opposed to the amount of people voting for a particular candidate.
Right. Well, it was, you know, they're using people, the definition of a person, just however they want in the moment that they want to. So like, you're a person as far as we need to count you, but you're not a person as far as who that you get to vote. Like, that's not a thing. We have to give you some food, but you don't get to vote.
So back then when Black people couldn't vote, were they considered citizens though?
No, but you're not.
Why were they? I'm shocked that they were even counting them.
So remember, the census, we're not counting citizens. We're counting literally, we're literally counting people. That's why there is no citizenship question on the census. It is intentional, because we just need to know how many people are within the country, so that the state, on the surface, again, surface versus what's actually happening. On the surface, we have the funds, the resources, the representation to speak towards the amount of people that's physically there. So right. That's what the purpose of the census is, to count how many bodies are actually in the country. But the citizens, the people with power, the people who have suffrage in that situation are the only ones who actually get to take advantage of that system. So that's what they were doing.
Yeah, that's crazy that they would even like use people that aren't citizens that can't vote in like taking them into account into a system about voting.
Oh, it's crafty.
Exactly. And that's why there's a problem. And that's why those same systems are in place. Black people to this day are still not considered people. They're considered 3/5 of a person in our constitution. So when you look around and you see how fucked up things are, it's because we're still going off of that same basis, the same verbiage, the same systems that were for slaves. So this is why even, you know, the question of defunding or, tweaking some things, it doesn't really make sense, because it's built on the basis of Black people not even being people. Forget citizens. They're not even considered people. So, and we're seeing, and that's why we're having these discussions, that it literally affects every part of our lives today.
Yeah, that's just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, it's also just in pulling back and saying, like, looking at the last election and feeling like, I mean, Hillary won the popular vote, and then knowing that, like, but that doesn't mean she wins the presidency. I think that's what blows my mind so much. Well, is that it counts within a state how many people you have, but it doesn't count on a whole.
Right.
That's what's so fucking mind-boggling.
Even though we're the United States.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why, like, the fact that young people are moving to urban centers and city centers has really hurt the liberal cause, because we're allocating ourselves to, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, right? Where we can rack up that popular vote total as much as we want, but you're never going to get more than 55 in Los Angeles, right? We're always going to cap out at 55 points. Even if we keep going and keep going and keep going and keep, it doesn't matter. So move to Des Moines.
Right.
Well, I also think it's about, like, calling our families.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, mine's from Florida, so. But I do think it is, and also Crooked Media does an Adopt Your State, where you can, which is, I'll also maybe try and include in the email. I mean, I adopted Florida, and what they do is they send you weekly emails where it's either like, email these people or call these people, or like this county is being overtaken by, you know, and that's the thing is it's like Republican versus Democrat. Like at this point, they're both pretty fucking flawed, but it's about regaining a system that's not so skewed in favor of Republicans right now. I mean, there is no equal anything, but I feel like that's something that we can all do is like call people from home.
That's a good resource too. Please, share that with us and stuff, because, it goes back to, all right, we're in a quote unquote blue state or wherever you are at, your state is your state. And unless it's a swing state, you're most likely going to have the same turnouts. But if we're able to contribute in some type of way to another state outside of our own, I think that would be really helpful and important as well, and it's stuff that we don't realize that we actually have the power to do. So I think that's really exciting.
With one caveat to that, just make sure you know exactly what's going on down ballot, because we talked about those assembly members and those state senators still really matter. So once you're safe on that and you feel like what's going on, throw some money to Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or whatever.
Right. That's it. Throw some money or talk to your family.
Both. Why not both?
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point.
Does anybody else have any points of discussion or questions before we wrap up tonight?
All right.
No chatty Cathys?
Okay, last one.
There we go.
I was kind of confused about the Rutherford Hayes rule. That was the 1877. It was basically like you said, like the second time, like the first time is the one when like 1803, I think, with the Hamilton one. And then there was the second time they tried to fix it. And I didn't understand the Hayes thing. And it doesn't have to do with the Hollywood Hayes rule.
No. It's not. Give me 1 second. Let me look back into my notes. In fact, I was reading.
It was something about like it was like the second time they tried to fix it but didn't or something, and I was kind of confused by that.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Okay. So what happened is that it was 1876, and what happened is that even though so that the Democrat Tilden won the popular vote, but apparently there were some electoral votes that were in dispute. So they were, I think what I had read was that they didn't know that they had counted people properly, and that they were like, it was obviously the 1800s. They were unsure of how many they tried to recheck the amount of votes, and there was disputes about how many states were voting how many ways. And then what they did is, instead of do a revote, what they did was they pulled an ad hoc commission of lawmakers and then the Supreme Court justices. They pulled those people together, and they looked at all the electoral votes that were brought in and just decided, they made the executive decision that Hayes was going to win, who was the Republican, which there wasn't a lot of like, this is why, that I could find. It was more or less that these people went into a room and sort of decided that, and I think that in that way, and Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a bit of like the tipping point for showing what the Electoral College could do of Electoral College votes versus popular votes.
Right.
Okay. Like showcasing the power of it, kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
So mainly saying that, like, even in that instance, when he didn't when he had won the popular vote, that there was enough electoral colleges, there were enough votes in the Electoral College where they were like, oh, there's been some voting problems and we're not sure of all the numbers. Let's not trust the popular vote. Let's trust the Electoral College vote over the popular vote.
Okay. So it's like, all of us in power are actually going to say what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Did I finally say that correctly? Ross?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that's still really confusing is we are, at the end of the day, these electors, they're actual humans, they're actual people, as we talked about.
Right.
So they're not. It's not some fault. It's not some like risk-free system. Like these people that have to eventually say, "Yep, okay, cool, popular vote, check the box, we got it, and we're gonna give our my vote is gonna go towards X candidate." There's something called faithless electors who take it upon themselves to say that what happened in my state is an anomaly and I choose to cast my vote for somebody else. We saw that happen in 2016 with a couple people who in states that were very close, in Michigan and Pennsylvania, where a matter of 40,000 votes across 5 states elected Donald Trump president. We saw people say, fuck it, I'm casting it for Jill Stein, or I'm casting it for Hillary Clinton, or whatever. And now there's actually legislation put in place. I think the Supreme Court ruled on it like 2 weeks ago, where your state, like states electors, now have to, by law, abide by the popular vote of their state. So that is something that is.
How is that not bigger news?
Because we
was a little
like that same day we found out that the like Louisiana abortion law got struck down, I think. So I think that kind of took the Supreme Court headlines, which rightfully so. But yeah, so like we won't have faithless electors necessarily anymore, especially going into 2020 where it's so crazy. And like Florida or Pennsylvania might be so close. And Donald Trump may not leave either way. But at least we won't have to deal with something like that.
Wait, so if the electorals in a state have to vote based off the popular vote, then doesn't that make them kind of obsolete?
In their state. So,
right. But then doesn't that add up to like the sum of the whole? Like,
well, that's been how they were supposed to do things before, but just some people who might be particularly biased or whatever decide for some reason or another that they're not going to cast their one electoral vote in their state for the popular vote winner. It's very rare. I don't want to make it seem like, and we should make it seem like that happens all the time. It's super rare. But now it's just mandated that whoever the popular vote winner is in your state, you have to cast your vote for that candidate. But yes, I understand what you mean. Why are we doing the system to begin with? Why not just do away with it? Well, because again, we have a conservative court and a Republican-held government, and it has benefited Republicans, and right now Republicans are in power. So why would they want to change it? And it literally takes amending the Constitution, which takes, I think, it would take 67 senators, I think, to vote to amend the Constitution, which is a big reach no matter what.
Andrea said, I think I remember reading in 2016 if they get fined if they vote against the electoral decision.
Yeah, some do. In some states they do. I think it was like, there's even some states that say it's going to be jail time. But white people, man, I don't know.
Okay. Wow. No.
Yeah.
Yep, it's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
But here we are.
So if people throughout my day are like, oh, the Electoral College, complaining about it, I can say, actually, there's a mandate where the electorals within each state have to vote for the popular vote of that state.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can. I don't want to sit here and act like that fixes the system, because at the end of the day, like California still only, though we have the most electoral votes, we are still disproportionately underserved in the Electoral College because, North Dakota and South Dakota still get their votes, right? And like their one person counts for every couple thousand of ours when you break it down by the numbers. So yeah, they're taking steps to fix things. but the Electoral College as a whole is still a really weird system that no other country really uses.
Yeah, I understand.
But it's what we got.
Right.
And it might change.
For now.
For now.
And maybe by
It's what we
2028,
got.
I'll be like, no, please keep it.
I was reading in the National Popular Vote Intersect Compact, what I was speaking on. You know, there's been articles and essays and, you know, saying that it doesn't affect one party greater than the other. It's essentially just a popular vote, right? So I think if anything, that should be the step that we should be moving in,
Absolutely.
to create a change, more of an immediate change versus changing the Constitution, which that opens up a whole can of worms. So that's what we got right now. And, you know, we can see how this could be possible. So hopefully this antiquated way of running our country can get up because we're in need of it very badly. If anybody else has anything else to say, we can maybe touch on it, but I do know we want to wrap up. It's approaching 8:30. Anything before we sign off? No? Okay, great. Again, weekly on Wednesdays here on the same meeting ID. So it's going to be the same every week. Click the link. It's in our bio on Reclaim Our Vote. We hope to see you next week here at 7 o'clock. Thanks again to everybody. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.